For those of you unaware, the Flat Earth conspiracy asserts that the Earth is flat, and that consequently, all of the evidence for a global Earth is either invalid or part of a grand conspiracy. This includes all photos that depict the curvature of the globe, GPS devices, the trajectory of the sun, moon, planets and stars, moon phases, lunar eclipses and time zones. But it doesn't just stop there. By implicit extension, proponents also denounce Einstein's theory of general relativity, most of physics and astrophysics. It really is the motherlode of conspiracies, because it insists that all scientists from all countries and that all governments have and are perpetuating this enormous conspiracy in order to either somehow profit financially or, I kid you not, to make the average citizen reject the Abrahamic God.
Bolshevik Revolution, Russia, 1917. November Revolution, Germany, 1918. 1949 Revolution, China. There's been 30 communist revolution attempts throughout the world, resulting in 94 million deaths. With these revolutions also came a loss of freedom and the moral decay of the host nation. History has told us that there has been an international conspiracy to bring all nations under a one-world communist government. Will America be next to fall to this international conspiracy? The answer to this question might come from a top-secret document discovered in Russia in the late 19th century, 20 years before the Russian Revolution. This secret document contained the plans for world domination. These protocols were transcript notes taken from a meeting of Jewish Zionist leaders from around the world. From this one meeting, the innermost circle of the rulers of Judaism received the methods for conquering the world. Not intended to be read by non-Jews, these protocols have been published in every major language under the title The Protocols of Zion. When these protocols were first released to the public, Zionist Jews everywhere screamed and complained that these 24 protocols were a hoax, a forgery, even a blood taint against the Jews. However, since the discovery and publication of the protocols, history itself has thus far been written according to the content and intent of the protocols, with the first example being the brutal and barbaric Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, led by covert Jews such as Lenin, Trotsky, Kaganovich, and others. The Jewish people make up less than 2% of any nation's population, but yet they are the top 1% of the wealthiest, most powerful individuals, and the industries they control are consistent with the content of what the protocols laid out over a century ago. In this film, we'll examine the protocols with current events in history, and we'll see if the protocols are consistent with what is happening in our world. And you can decide for yourself whether the protocols of Zion are a forgery or the playbook intended to destroy Christianity and rein in humanity's greatest enemy to come, the Jewish Antichrist.
Now, needless to say, there are thousands of proofs offered by Flat Earth proponents, and to address them all would take a significant amount of time and would bore even the most intrigued Flat Earth enthusiast. And so what I've decided to do is to address what I believe is the root of the conspiracy, and at the same time cover a few of the most prominent arguments.
Hi, and welcome to another video from a plaintruth.info. Today I want to get some information out about the top Vatican astronomer, Jesuit astronomer, a guy named Guy J. Consolmagno. It's the Jesuits who run the astronomy. It's the Jesuits who tell us the story of their cosmology about Earth and also control the Big Bang Theory. It all comes out of the Vatican. In fact, very few are aware that the Vatican is the largest and longest owner of patents for telescopes and observatories. In 1600, as we'll get into a little while later, the Vatican established the first observatories in the United States. In 1540s, right after they founded the Loyola St. Ignatius Society of Jesus, they went into India and Chinese to teach astronomy. But what I want to focus on today is Father Consolmagno and his bio. I mean, this guy is a rocket scientist, if you want to call it, degrees in MIT, University of Arizona, doctorate, Harvard University, taught there, MIT, joined the Peace Corps. He entered the Society of Jesus, took vows in 1991. And also that an asteroid was even named after the guy. The International Atomic Union named it as Little Guy. He's a popular speaker as well, a writer of popular science, because it's all fiction, folks. He's been a guest in honor at several science fiction conventions. And he also has an honorary doctorate from Georgetown University, the head of the Jesuits. So you can see this guy is fully infiltrated into the Jesuits and the Jesuit story. He's also known as the Pope's astronomer and was named by Pope Francis to be the director of the Vatican Observatory in 2015. So let's hear what he had to say in 2008 in this very telling story about how they're coming out with the Flat Earth story, and we'll get into that a little more after we hear him talk.
A couple of years ago, I was asked to do a Bible study group. I'm thinking Catholics don't do Bible studies, you know. And to do a Bible study group in Houston. I'm going, Catholics definitely don't do Bible studies in Texas. To do a Bible study group in Houston with a bunch of astronauts. Astronauts? Oh, I could do that, yeah. So I wound up at a dinner evening of about 12 couples, all of them astronauts and spouses. One of the guys, half of them were Catholic as it turns out, so much for Catholics not doing Bible studies. One of the guys came up to me and said, you know, I just want to let you know, I believe in the absolute truth that creation was made in the 6 days just as described in the book of Genesis. And that's my religion. I just want to let you know that ahead of time. And I'm thinking, you know, have you actually read Genesis? Where it says the world is flat and it's covered with a dome and there's water above and below the dome. You know, where does the shuttle go? How come you don't get wet? But then he told me a little bit more. He said, you know, before he was an astronaut, he was a test pilot. Test pilots, you don't want to have the habit of creatively reinterpreting their written instructions. Just another owner's manual. Because that's the way they view the world. Whereas in the ancient world, you know, what are the oldest books we have? The Iliad, the Odyssey, they're poems. They're books of poetry. And the world was interpreted in terms of metaphor and simile. And of course, the crazy thing is, science itself is metaphor and simile. Newton's equation for the fall of a rock due to the laws of gravity is a poem. It says the path of this falling rock is like the solution to this equation. It's not that they're the same thing. You know, the sad thing of that statement about evolution being proved, evolution is not going to be proved. Nothing in science is ever proved.
Nothing in science is ever proved.
Science describes. It doesn't prove. I've got two really thick books on my shelf back in Castor Gandolfo. One of them is the Bible, and the other is a book by Misner, Thorne, and Wheeler called Gravitation. And this is, you know, about that thick, and it's all about Einstein's general theory of relativity. The Bible's 3,000 years old. The Gravitation book is 25 years old. The Gravitation book is out of date. It's obsolete. Science books go obsolete. They're supposed to. 1,000 years from now, our science, our understanding of evolution, our understanding of the solar system, our understanding of the Big Bang is going to be completely different than what it is now. I hope.
Are you saying, though, that then the problem is that on one level science is dominated by these kind of fundamentalist techies who can't read a text other than in a fundamentalist way?
There is an element of that. I wouldn't say it's dominated by it.
Yeah.
Because the funny thing is most religious people are not arch creationist fundamentalists. Most evangelicals are not. But those are the ones you see on TV. The sad thing of that statement about evolution being proved, evolution is not going to be proved. Nothing in science is ever proved. So I'm thinking, have you actually read Genesis? Where it says the world is flat and it's covered with a dome and there's water above and below the dome. Where does the shuttle go? How come you don't get wet?
So there you have the top Vatican official right next to the Pope advising him about astronomy, telling everyone that to interpret the Bible and just what it says the earth is flat. Now here we have over 35 lunar craters that are named after Jesuit astronomers. These guys have been rolling and telling the story of our cosmology about a heliocentric Earth for 500 years, portraying themselves as the bad guys who were proven wrong by science. Where here we have their top scientists that went to MIT, that went to Harvard, all the degrees and everything, the top spokesmen going to sci-fi fiction comedy con events. Here's a guy saying seriously that, we got to take the Earth as being flat, and that the genesis of our evolution is going to show that gravity is debunked. He hopes. This is what the man says. But here you can see that the L.u.c.i.f.e.r project is a satanic telescope taking over Indian, Native American burial grounds for their purposes. And then look at the history, folks. Look at the history of all the astronomers since the 1540s that have gone all around the world, the Jesuits, who have preached their version of the heliocentric theory. This is how it all got started. I'll put this in the show notes, but just look at from the 1650s all the way through to the 1900s into the 20th century with Einstein. These guys were all influential around the world. The Jesuits were telling the story of the heliocentric story. Does that make sense to anyone of why the Vatican and the Roman Catholic Church and the Jesuits would be promoting and observing the stars in the heavens when the Bible is their book that they go by? Well, there was a reason for doing all this that we'll get into in a minute. The difference between the Jesuits and all other Catholic orders was the Jesuits deliberately invited demonic spirits into their followers. And he goes on. The Jesuits have always been enemies of the Bible, since the Catholic Church ranks papal decree and tradition above the Scriptures anyway. Decreasing confidence in the Scripture increases confidence in pastors, priests, and the Pope as authorities that we know more than the common man can. We are the authority, believe us, don't read the Bible. That was the whole counter-Reformation, the Protestants against the church, when the church says, you have to follow me, I'm the vicar, the closest to God, don't listen to the Bible, listen to me, the Pope. And it's been that way ever since. So here we have massive evidence starting back from the mid-1600s or 1550s all the way through today, where the Jesuits are controlling the narrative about space. And also it goes back to Newton. I didn't cover him, but Newton's third edition of his basic book on the theory of gravity was published by the Jesuits and was very well used. Again, folks, the Catholics and the Jesuits have controlled the mindset of our minds about what the theocosmology is of the world. They also control the Big Bang theory. They've controlled it all. And they've used stories about some brilliant man named Einstein who came up with all this when it's absolutely fraudulent. This guy was a complete fraud. He plagiarized others' works. He's been condemned by others in his fields. German and Austrian scientists condemned his work when it came out. It's been condemned by brilliant Nikola Tesla as well. The guy has been proven to be an out-and-out fraud, yet all you hear today is how great and how smart Einstein is, because people just don't want to wake up and don't want to learn very inconvenient truths about how the world really works. So now I want to turn the attention around to the Flat Earth community, and I want to see how many in our Flat Earth community that's been active for now a couple, 3 years have been covering the Jesuits. Rob Skiba, the Christian? No. Mark Sargent? No. Celebrate Truth, Robbie Davidson? No. Jeranism, Globebusters? No. Eric DeBay? Hell no. It's all about the Jews and the Freemasons. Patricia Steers? Of course not. Russian vids? Forget about it. No one can touch the Jesuits because they're all controlled opposition, folks. The Flat Earth Conference going on in November, it's all the Christians putting them on, but did they talk about Jesuits at all? Do they talk about how their Christian faith has been betrayed by the scheming Jesuits? No, you don't hear any of that at all. So here's the next hand I think is going to be played by the Jesuits in the ongoing conquer and divide strategy when they brought out the Flat Earth with Eric E.D. DeBay. I think they're coming out with this guy named Robert Sungenis. Get it? Sungenis? Genus? Sungenis? Because they're Apollo sun-worshipping gods. There's a books. These books came out starting in, I believe, 2013, 2014, and it's all talking about geocentrism. It's not talking about a flat earth or an infinite plane as a newly created meme as by the Infinite Plane Society and all the baloney going on with Math Powerland and the using his name and billboards. No. This is books coming out, scholarly, somewhat scholarly books. I have them, and they're not that well scholared or written well. But it is about making the case that the Catholic Church is going to come out and claim that they were right all along, that the geocentrism is about what it's really at. And this book by Mr. Sungenis, or these many books, he's got several of them, is indications that they're going to be playing this geocentrism, proving Galileo was wrong and the Church was right. That's one of the books they have out already. So is this priming the pump? Is this getting us ready for the next meme? And we're going to argue now with all the flat earth apologists out there that I just listed. Are they going to start arguing back and forth now? That seems to be the case, folks. But please make up your own mind. Do your own homework. Do your own research. This stuff has been going on for a very long time. The cat's out of the bag, and it can no longer be put back, and it's time for us all to get out and start speaking our truth. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to mention is those of you who don't think that the world is controlled by the Vatican, I want you to Google or look up the founding of Washington, D.C., which I'm coming up with in the next video, because no one knows the founding of Washington, D.C. It used to be named Rome, Maryland. Yes, Rome, Maryland used to be the name of Washington, D.C., the city of Rome, before it was turned into Washington, D.C. by John Carroll, the Jesuit who founded Georgetown. The Potomac was also called the Tiber.
Humans, for the most part, don't have a clue. They don't want one or need one either. They're happy. They think they have a good bead on things.
Well, why the big secret? People are smart. They can handle it.
A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. 1,500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat. And 15 minutes ago, you knew that people were alone on this planet.
They would not have believed that the world was round. They must have been founding members of the Flat Earth Society. They must have been founding members of the Flat Earth Society. They would not have believed that the world was round.
If I say that the world is round and someone else says it's flat, that's worth reporting.
Or half to one of each side. And if someone says the Earth is round and someone says the Earth is flat, at some point you're going to make a judgment. The Earth is flat people is just flat out wrong.
Hey, is it worth it?
Oh, yeah, it's worth it. If you're strong enough.
But they're vast riches, as I think my book makes clear. I think the Vatican has been good in general about not giving a ideological litmus test to those of us who are using the archives. But, you know, I certainly get comments when I'm there from archivists, although in both ways. I'll have some archivists will come up, think of one in particular, and kind of whisper, you know, I think you're doing good work and, you know, keep it up. Others, for example, when I was at the Jesuit archive, a couple of archivists, Jesuits, came up to me, even though I was working on a book that was on Pope and Mussolini, and said to me, you know, the Jesuits never were anti-Semites. And I hadn't started a discussion, so I think there's, at least among some concern about these issues and what I might be writing.
Father, I've got an article here entitled "Two Eminent Churchmen Agree."
Yes.
That there actually is, this is a shocker to a lot of people,
Yes.
that there are satanic practices going on at the Vatican. Could that be true?
Yes.
You want to say that? If I was a lawyer and you were on the witness chair, I'd say, would you say it?
It's out loud. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Now, when we say in the Vatican, it's at a certain level, and there's no doubt about it that there have been and still are practices that are formally venerating Lucifer, the prince of this world. There's no doubt about that.
The people who are hanging out at the United Nations are just simply, in a nutshell, one word, they're Luciferian. And I'm just sorry to report that, but that's just what it is. And so all of the people today who are promoting the United Nations and the concept of world government, whether they know it or whether they don't, whether they're doing it for money or whether they're doing it for power or for whatever reason they're doing it, they are promoting the philosophy and the religion of the Antichrist.
After a while, the drums, chants, and prayers representing many of the world's leading religions all started to sound alike, somehow losing their flavor in a melting pot of spiritual soup. The first ever Millennium World Peace Summit of religious and spiritual leaders took place at the United Nations in August, and some believe it marked the first major step toward a movement to usher in a global spiritual body that may one day speak for all religions. Robert McGinnis with the Family Research Council says it appears the hidden agenda is to unite people under one religious organization so they will peacefully accept UN goals such as population control, abortion rights, and one world government.
A new world order, a civilization of love can be achieved. May God guide us and bless us as we strive to work together hand in hand and build together a world of peace.
Ambassador, everybody's calling for global currency. I think part of this is a game, but I think also part of it is now the UN is saying, you know what, we should have a global currency.
Pope Benedict XVI is calling for a new world financial order.
It's also a movement to tie the entire globe together into one big government. Well, now there's call for America to give up our dollar for a global currency. Gee, I think I've read that in a book somewhere. Oh, the Bible.
And down below, here he is meeting with members of the Trilateral Commission. Steering committee, all members of the Council on Foreign Relations, a bunch of Marxist hoodlums made up of people like Zbigniew Brzezinski and David Rockefeller, and CEOs, Henry Kissinger. Here he is getting a little blessing from one of the adorers of Shiva, Bombay. Something is wrong. Do we not recognize something is wrong? I know all you do, but you show these pictures to somebody outside a Novus Ordo church and they say, well, what's the problem? This is at a Buddhist temple. I'll give you the date, May 10th, 1984. This ethnic cleansing that you're hearing about is Christian cleansing throughout the world. And as the Antichrist becomes more powerful, you're just simply going to see more and more and more of it. Now here, we have a picture of John Paul II hand in hand with the communist 33rd degree Mason, Nelson Mandela. So most all the blacks think that Nelson Mandela is the great black hope to South Africa. Here he is shaking hands with the communist Mikhail Gorbachev, who's also a Mason. We are in the middle of spiritual warfare. But the point is that I think some of us, at least, are here because we realize that there's a real problem today. But to people who are on the outside looking in, this is not what they see. They're watching leadership of the Catholic Church meet with members of the Communist Party, like Togliatti in Italy. And they're asking themselves, how can this be? I think we're in the last days. How we got here is anybody's guess, I suppose. Those who hate evil, I don't think support it. And those who understand false religions, I don't think hang around with members of the occult.
The question of how and why the United Nations is the crux of the great conspiracy to destroy the sovereignty of the United States and the enslavement of the American people within a UN one-world dictatorship is a complete and unknown mystery to the vast majority of the American people. The reason for this unawareness of the frightening danger to our country and to the entire free world is simple. The masterminds behind this great conspiracy have absolute control of all of our mass communications media, especially television, the radio, the press, and Hollywood. We all know that our State Department, the Pentagon, and the White House have brazenly proclaimed that they have the right and the power to manage the news, to tell us not the truth, but what they want us to believe.
I want to talk to you for a moment about something that's very important. The coming one world religion and the danger of the coming one world religion. Both the Apostle Paul and Jesus Christ warned that in the last days, and we're in the last days, that there would be false Christs, false messiahs, false prophets, false teachers, and that even Satan himself sends his ministers as angels of light, when in actuality they're fallen angels. It's important to understand that not every supernatural experience, not every miracle, not everybody who claims to be from God, but when you look at what they're writing and teaching, it contradicts what the Bible says. In other words, it's teaching a message that's the exact opposite of what the Old Testament and New Testament say. Now, the Apostle Paul has taught us, as well as Jesus, that when a spiritual teacher or a spiritual movement arises, even though they use the word miracles, and if they use the word Son of God and Jesus, or they say they have a prophecy, or they say they've had a revelation, or God did this, or God did that through them, and that the world is going to become one, and we're entering the age of Aquarius, and we're going to have a new one world religion and a beautiful one world government. These are wolves in sheep's clothing. These are the false prophets that the Apostle Paul warned us about that would come in increasing number in the last days.
If I have seen further, it is only by standing on the shoulders of giants. Isaac Newton. Strange as it seems, this lofty arc began only 5 centuries ago, when a Polish monk peered into the sky. His theories would spark the scientific revolution and launch mankind on a fantastic voyage of exploration and discovery.
Discovery, roll program. Roger, roll, Discovery.
Since the dawn of civilization, man has gazed in wonderment at the skies. The end of the Middle Ages brought a revival of classical learning. Striving to explain human nature, intellectuals embraced the scientific method of observation and questioning. As they focused on the movement of the stars in the heavens, astronomers began to replace mythology and magic with hard science. Aristotle provided the physics for this understanding. Ptolemy created a model of the universe. Their wisdom had reigned for nearly 2,000 years. Even Christian dogma accepted this view. At the same time, the Reformation was shattering Christianity, shaking loose the Church's hold on the European mind. Medieval European scholarship had largely been based on belief. Now that approach came under siege, as thinkers began to use mathematical data. In their studies of the stars, astronomers had long struggled to explain what they were seeing. What caused the sun to appear to travel east to west each day? And why did the planets seem to track eastward across the zodiac? Nicholas Copernicus reasoned that the Earth might spin, causing the sun's flight. And if the Earth moved in a circle around the sun, that would explain why the sun seemed to travel across the zodiac. In so many and such important ways, then, wrote Copernicus, do the planets bear witness to Earth's mobility. But Copernicus was reluctant to publicize his ideas. The Church denounced thoughts that conflicted with its doctrine as heresy, a sin, and a crime. To fight such challenges, the Church devised the Inquisition. Copernicus had no illusions about how inquisitors might treat him and his theories. Copernicus kept his theories largely secret until he was 70 years old. His book on the revolutions of the celestial spheres was not printed until 1543. The first copy was placed in his hands as Copernicus lay dying. In the spring of 1609, Galileo Galilei stood before a new marvel, the spyglass. Galileo was a devout Catholic, but he was also an avid scientist. He improved this new tool by grinding lenses that increased its range by a factor of 30. With his telescope, Galileo looked further into the night sky than anyone before. He saw craters dotting the surface of the moon and spots on the sun. Galileo saw moons orbiting Jupiter. He observed Venus moving through phases much like the Earth's moon. This information persuaded him that Copernicus was right. Just as Jupiter's moons orbited that giant planet, other planets like Earth and Venus must therefore orbit the sun. But trouble was looming. Galileo's findings were explosive. They buttressed Copernican theory, which the Vatican condemned. The questioning minds of the Renaissance were confounding the Church and its long-held teachings. With science, they had proven the church wrong on a most basic concept, that Earth stood at the center of God's universe. The Vatican scorned Copernican theory as only offering a mechanistic means of seeing the world. Science showed how things worked, not who designed them. Determined to silence Galileo, the Vatican put him on trial. A church tribunal convicted the scientist on the charge of grave suspicion of heresy. That crime was punishable by burning at the stake. To escape the flames, Galileo partially recanted. He was granted a reprieve, house arrest, for the remainder of his life. As his sentence was read aloud, a still defiant Galileo muttered, "Yet it moves." The church tried to smother scientific illumination, but the spark of the Copernican revolution had set fire to the European imagination. The world was changing, and there would be no turning back. The Milky Way was only one of countless galaxies. These discoveries only raised more questions. Einstein died in 1955. In his wake have come clashing theories. Some say the universe did take shape in a Big Bang, and that a Big Bang will destroy it. Others maintain that the universe always has been and always will be. Even so, we can clearly see how Copernicus literally turned our perspective inside out. No longer was the Earth at the center of creation. Today's Catholic Church accepts the findings of Copernicus, Galileo, and their colleagues, largely embracing the science it once sought to extinguish.